रेडी। ये जो आपको सेट मिलेगा ये मिल जाएगा आपको SSC C एंड D ग्रेड टेस्ट 78 यूट्यूब @100 और @80। इसके बाद एक सीन कंटेंट बोलूँगा मैं आपको। देखो आप सभी को ना 12 के 12 केसी रिव्यू 11 में दे चुका हूँ, एक मैं कल बोलूँगा वेडनेसडे को। ये एग्रीकल्चर का सेट, एक प्रेसिडेंट का सेट, इसके बाद में प्रीवियस ईयर के मैं आपको सैटरडे बोलूँगा जो प्रीवियस ईयर की डिक्टेशन है। साथ में चाहो तो कॉन्वोकेशन करना कर लो, नहीं तो इट्स ओके, प्रेसिडेंट की स्पीच को एक साथ सेट और बढ़ा सकते हो। दोनों में से चॉइस है आपकी, क्योंकि लगभग सेम कंटेंट उसके अंदर कवर है। ये सभी के सभी काम आपको वनडे तक खत्म कर लेना है। मंडे से सारी डिक्टेशंस ऑडियो पे ही होगी, मैनुअल नहीं बोलूँगा, और ऑडियो को ही एक ही बार लिखना है और एक ही जाकर टाइप करना है, ठीक है। तब तक आप सब अपनी टाइपिंग स्पीड में एक्यूरेसी 98 to 100 कर लेंगे, और स्पीड का टारगेट क्लियर है 35 और 45। डी के लिए 35 और सी के लिए 45। रेडी। Start it. Now, coming back to the question of minorities, you will please find why this particular resolution has been so widely put in that it might include a religious minority as well, a linguistic minority as well, or an economic minority, as some honorable members rightly pointed out. Now, sir, a question arises whether there ought to be any such protection insofar as a particular type of minority is concerned. I shall deal with the question of minorities at some length, but you will please find, sir, what the honorable mover wants is that there ought to be a permanent minority commission. It ought to be endowed with statutory powers. Therefore, sir, an attempt is being made for the first time by my honorable friend for driving a wedge between a community and a community. So far as the Constitution is concerned, as my honorable friend rightly pointed out, whenever the question of minorities arises, we have to be extremely careful. The Constitution is a very sacred document which has embodied all the different aspects of the common question of India's nationality. India is one in spite of different types of languages and religions. But in the midst of all these diversities, we have to develop a common nationality. Therefore, whenever we consider the question of the development of the nation and the interest of the nation, you cannot afford to think in terms either of religion or of language. It is true, sir, that there are different religions. It is also true that there are different languages. Therefore, a question arose, and the framers of the Constitution had to devise a constitution in the midst of the unity of India with certain diversities here and there. For that purpose, what they did was they devised a common nationality for the whole of India, and insofar as religious minorities were concerned, they were given certain rights. I would not go into the details regarding the provisions of the fundamental rights regarding the practice of religion. Certain rights have been given to the religious minorities, and beyond that, it would not be proper to bring in the religious minorities for political rights. For that, we have to be extremely careful. I would also point out that while we have to develop a common nationality, the members of the Indian nation have to understand that we are one nation. Therefore, certain rights in respect of religious minorities were given, they were fundamental rights, and most of them are justiciable rights. Here, we stopped so far as the religious rights were concerned. Then a question arose, what ought to be the attitude of not only the government but the society regarding the languages. It was true that there were certain interests of the regional languages. Now, these languages required to be developed, but they were not meant for dividing one man from the other. So, in 1956, when the states were formed to a certain extent on the basis of language, what was done was not to have a state with 100% people belonging to the regional language, because there were bound to be people belonging to different languages. That was the reason why this question was considered at great length, and the States Reorganization Commission also went into this question of linguistic minorities. It was bound to arise here and there because they were likely to feel that their rights and safeguards given to them might or might not be properly implemented. So, this question was considered first by the States Reorganization Commission, and they dealt with the question whether we should have a permanent minorities commission. They went into it very carefully and shrewdly. They found out that it would not be proper to set up a permanent minorities commission because the result, if not the actual effect, would be that a permanent wage would be driven between one community and another community. So far as language minorities were concerned, they had a right so far as their own languages were concerned. They had also an obligation to understand the language of the majority in the particular state. It is only by thus coming together that the members of the two language groups would come together and would harmoniously develop. But it was found at the time when the States Reorganization Commission had to consider this, that some machinery should be devised for safeguarding the rights of linguistic minorities only, and after full consideration, what was considered was that only in respect of linguistic minorities certain rights should be extended and certain rights should be safeguarded, and an officer should be appointed by the President for making a report on the question whether these rights of the linguistic minorities are or are not properly safeguarded. Coming to the internal affairs of the country, Madam Deputy Chairman, the policies of the Government of India for the last 60 years have been so manipulated that the rich people are becoming richer and the poorer sections of the people are becoming still poorer. The committee that has been appointed to investigate into the question of the distribution of income has not yet given its verdict, but it is common knowledge that the people who are in the higher ups have become more rich and the people in the lower rung have become poorer. The prices of essential commodities that the peasants and the workers use have gone up so high that they are not within the reach of the mass of the people of the country. Government have not taken adequate steps to bring down the prices and to stabilize the prices as was recommended by the Food Grains Committee. We are now in the 11th plan. While the plans are progressing, the number of the unemployed in the country is increasing. This is a very anomalous position. It is the government alone that can explain why. In spite of the plans, the unemployment problem is becoming more and more acute. 100 की स्पीड है, फ्लक्चुएशन 110 तक का है और ये आपको सेट नंबर 78 के नाम से 100 की स्पीड से मिल जाएगा. Ready? Start it. Mr. Vice Chairman, sir, I thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on the banking, public financial institutions and negotiable instruments law amendment bill 2008. Sir, if we go back to the history when the announcement was made by Srimati Indira Gandhi, our former Prime Minister, we had seen that there was opposition even from the congressmen against the progressive thinking, and they said that the banks should not be nationalized. But Indiraji was committed to it. She made it a point to see that the banks are nationalized so that the gates are opened for the purpose of helping the poor and the downtrodden. Sir, we have to accept the fact that the banks have become public institutions nowadays, and even the poor people can go there and get loans. I would like to submit that in some banks, the system of lending money and providing financial assistance to the small businessmen, agriculturists, and the persons who are small vendors has not been taken very seriously. In the last year's budget, that is the 2008-9 budget, which was presented by the then Finance Minister, the trust was given to agriculture. Rupees 2,000 crores were allocated for the rural development programs, and rupees 3,000 crores were given for the benefit of the agriculturists who are employed in the agricultural work. Sir, still, I would like to say that the benefits have not reached them for the simple reason that the banks are looking at the agriculturists and also small businessmen and vendors as persons who will not be able to repay the amount. I would like to submit that the reality is that the big businessmen who have taken loans of crores and crores of rupees from the banks have not repaid the loans in time. There are several methods adopted by the banks to collect the money from the farmers who have taken the money for agricultural purposes. They collect from the sugar mills, they collect from the marketing societies, and from several places the money is collected from them. But the banks are treating the agriculturists as unwanted elements. That tendency among the bank officials should go. Now, sir, they have started a system of bank finances to the agriculturists within a radius of about 20 kilometers, which will definitely benefit the agriculturists. Sir, the other important aspect is that in spite of the deposits mounting, there is a system of paying commission to the promoters in which a lot of bungling is going on. They are paying promoters commission to those persons who mobilize the deposits. When it is a government institution which is depositing the money, why should they pay promoters commission? To whom are they paying? This particular aspect of promoters commission should be removed, because the finances are there to benefit the people. The officers are there in the banks to collect the deposits. Why should there be a middleman? Just like a promoter to get the commission from the bank. Sir, the other aspect is that they are introducing computers. Sir, it created a furor in the minds of the workers working in the banks. Some unions agree, some unions fail to agree. Some of the banks have introduced computers. Sir, the assurance which is given by the Finance Ministry that the employees will not be retrenched and that they will be accommodated elsewhere should be followed. They should also find out the avenues for employing those persons in some allied works. They are opening new branches. They can be accommodated in those new branches. Sir, even in the rural areas, as the Honorable Member has just mentioned, the opening of a branch is not a discrete thing. When one Indian bank opens a branch in a particular village, immediately the State Bank goes there, the UCO Bank goes there. They do not apply their mind. They do not find out what will be the total business there. They should see to its visibility while opening a branch. That system is not being followed. I am talking about the southern region. The banks want to have a competition there, but the competition should be on the basis of population there and the area in which they are operating. But simply opening a branch without transacting any business will be a burden on the bank itself. Sir, about the appointment of directors, I would like to submit that in most of the banks, the directors have not been appointed for. The past 2 or 3 years, it may have been due to various reasons. Representatives of the people should be definitely represented there, but in most of the banks, directors have not been appointed for 2 years or 3 years, and in some banks their full strength is not there. Only a skeleton group of directors is functioning there. Sir, another important burning problem is misappropriation by bank officials. The fraud and misappropriation by bank officials run into lakhs and lakhs of rupees, which is a burden on the banks, and these amounts have been misappropriated by them. 80 की स्पीड है, 860 वर्ड है, और ये आपको SSC टेस्ट 78@80 के नाम से मिल जाएगा. सीन कंटेंट लिखेंगे 80 पे, जो विद कोमा नो कोमा दोनों फाइल में अवेलेबल होगा. Ready? Started. Madam, Deputy Chairman, when the House rose for lunch, I was discussing the response of the public to the loan program of the government and was trying to point out that it was rather a serious tendency in the sense that the response of the public had been proved to be poorer during the 10th plan period than during the 9th plan period. I was trying to point out that looking to the fact that the national income was rising and the people were becoming more conscious of a developing economy and the need to mobilize the resources, more and more a contrary trend ought to have appeared, and that in view of that, this trend was disturbing. This trend is to be contrasted with the trend of the public regarding the call from the corporate sector for the investment of their monies. Here we find that the shares of some of the new companies or of the old companies that are issuing new shares are oversubscribed at times to the extent of 15 times the capital that has been asked for by the companies. So here are two pictures. One, the picture of the government asking the public to subscribe to the public loans, and the other, the picture of the response of the public to the corporate sector demanding investments from the public. While on the one hand, there is an enthusiastic response to the demand from the corporate sector, on the other, there is a very poor response as far as the loan program of the government is concerned. This is a matter of some concern, and I feel that the government should pay more attention than just exhorting the people to save more and to hand over their savings to the government, as the Honorable Finance Minister has done more than once. If it would have been merely a question of rediverting the money that is coming from the corporate sector to the public exchequer in the form of loans, perhaps the matter would not have been so serious. Then it would have been just a question of reallocation of the functions between the public sector and the private sector. But I feel that there is a large amount of money which is just changing to some lucrative channel, and that explains why the response to the demand from the corporate sector is 15 times. This shows that 14 times that particular capital is not required by that company, and if there had been some adequate step or measure whereby originally that money could have gone to the public exchequer, to that extent there would not have been any disappointment to the people who wanted shares but who did not get them, and disappointment to the public exchequer by not getting the response which it ought to have got. That, to my mind, leads to the question of the pattern of the rate of interest. In a developing economy, and especially in view of the fact that a large number of companies are being floated today which have got an element of growth in them, thereby attracting so much capital towards them, the Government of India will have to take into consideration the question of the rate pattern of interest on their loans, and to see whether something could not be done whereby the public will be attracted to a large extent towards their loan program than hitherto. it has appeared in the press that the question of supply and want is being reconsidered and that offers are sought to be made more attractive. If in the same strain the entire question of the loan program is also considered, it may be possible that these loans also might be made more attractive and thereby more capital, which is today just changing the channels of profitable employment, might be diverted to the public exchequer in the form of public loans. Then there is the question of the state governments performing their part which has been assigned to them during the 11th plan period. In this connection, I would like to draw the attention of the Honorable House to a very important recommendation which has been made by the 11th Finance Commission, namely the appointment of a higher power commission to go into the entire question of the allocation of financial resources between the central government and the state governments. They have argued the whole case in nearly 1.5 pages in order to show why it has now become necessary that a high power commission should be appointed to go into this important question. According to the third Finance Commission, the allocation of resources between the center and the states was made at a time when planned economic development was not visualized. When the Constitution was framed, the development of the public sector, the new responsibilities which the states were going to assume and a plan era were not properly visualized, and it was under these conditions that these allocations were being made. 840 वर्ड है और ये आपको विद कोमा नो कोमा दोनों फाइल मिल जाएगी आपको. 23 नंबर है और केसी सोर्स है इसका. टाइप करेंगे, अदरवाइज आप सीन कंटेंट टाइप करेंगे